Growing up, I was an extremely skinny, extremely insecure gamer. And while sure, the gaming was fun growing up, but it resulted in me being a skinny, insecure teenager with nothing really going for him in terms of self-improvement. Luckily, around halfway through high school, I got introduced to the gym and I quickly became obsessed with it. I was in the gym for like over 3 hours every day, loving every second of it, taking crazy pre-workouts, watching David Lade vlogs. And while I would love to say that snowballed into a perfect timeline of linear progression, and now I'm an aesthetic god, that's simply not the case. My fitness journey to this point is laden with mistakes, plateaus, losing my gains like multiple times. Why did I let that happen? And well, honestly, if I could go back in time and tell my younger self exactly what to do, I probably would do that. I'm actually grateful for all the mistakes I made along the way because now I've learned from them and they won't happen again. After reflecting on my journey and the lessons I learned along the way, I've come up with the 6 biggest fitness mistakes and how to avoid them. Number 1 is not tracking your food and not tracking your training. Basically, for my entire training career, my goal has been putting on muscle and gaining weight. And my biggest mistake on the non-training side of things was not tracking my calories and not tracking my protein consistently. I would tell myself, oh, I can calculate it in my head, I'm good, I just eat a lot of food, I don't really have to think about it, and I wouldn't track. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of skinny guys make, is that they simply do not count their protein and their calories, and then they wonder why they've been stuck at the same weight and the same gym progress for a couple months. I was super motivated, dedicating a lot of time and energy to training in the gym, and yet I wasn't doing the other half of the equation. I'm sure back then there was plenty of days, if not the majority of days, where I needed to be consuming 200 grams of protein and 3,200 plus calories, and I was probably consuming 2,200 calories and 120 grams of protein. It's one of those things where how dedicated are you really when you're only willing to put in the work on one half of the equation? The other side of that was I was not tracking my training. Sure, at the beginning I was doing okay, I really just needed to be getting in the gym, doing some movements. I mean, with newbie gains, you can just stand in the gym and build some muscle. However, as time progressed, yes, I got a little more structured. I started doing the push-pull leg split, but I wasn't keeping track of the weight I was doing or the reps I was doing on certain movements, how many reps I had in reserve after I finished a set. It was more just going in and doing, 3x10, 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 using the same weight I used last week. Because of that, I was probably cutting my potential for progressive overload at least in half. So while yes, for complete beginners, you just need to be getting in the gym, getting your form right, training somewhat intensely to what you think is intense. Once you get out of that novice phase and transition into intermediate, it's time to begin tracking all your lifts to truly optimize your progress in the gym. However, there was one thing I was keeping track of, and that leads us into number 2, which is maxing out too often. We've literally all been there. You're in the gym, you're excited, you're doing bench press, squats, deadlifts, and the progression is just going so fast. So of course you're wondering, well, I need to know how strong I am, so I'm gonna go for a 1 rep max. And then you start hitting 1 rep max PRs, and you get that dopamine, you get that ego boost, you feel good about yourself, and it kind of becomes an addiction. I remember going for 1 rep maxes on deadlift every 2 weeks. This was an extremely hard pill for me to swallow. I don't deadlift anymore, but when I was starting, being such an extremely skinny kid and just constantly hitting these little PRs on deadlifts was so validating for me. And not only that, we all know 1 rep maxes give you an ego boost. And the reason why going for maxes pretty often is a complete detriment to your fitness journey is because it absolutely fries you. It's immensely taxing on your CNS, your joints, your endurance. And the thing is, that fatigue isn't only messing up that singular day of working out where you hit the PR, but perhaps even the next 2 to 3 days. A good analogy for this is imagine you're stacking little 4x4 Lego bricks, over time, every single workout, all the little gains, you're stacking these bricks, and then you get a pretty impressive, nice Lego tower, and you kind of want to show it off, so you start whipping it around, you whip it around, and all of a sudden, you accidentally hit a wall, and like 4 bricks fly off. So then instead of continuing building up that tower, you have to go back and put on 4 or 5 new bricks to get where you were. That's basically what maxing out does, and I know people are going to start arguing, but how am I going to know that I'm getting stronger in the gym? By doing what I just said earlier, tracking your workouts. Number 3 is definitely going to be the most controversial one, and that is power building. I think this is definitely the most common practice and style of training for younger guys. Essentially, power building is you start a workout with your main compound and you do it in a powerlifting style and you're trying to blow up your lifts in that sense. And then after that, you go and do a full bodybuilding hypertrophy style workout. The reason for that is you're trying to do an entire powerlifting style of training and progression on your main lifts, doing sub 5 rep sets to try to increase your strength, heavy singles, heavy doubles, heavy triples, and then you're turning around and trying to do a full bodybuilding workout, trying to maximize your volume, maximize the intensity, maximize the muscle gain. So while yes, you can do both, you can get progress in both, neither will be optimal, and I think it's much better to go through different phases of hypertrophy, strength, over maybe like a 6 to 9 month span of each, because each one requires different kinds of volume and different kinds of recovery times. Like for powerlifting, you can't only worry about muscle recovery, you have to worry about joint recovery and central nervous system recovery. Whereas for hypertrophy, you can have some little achy joints and still go in and get a really effective high volume hypertrophy workout. Another thing is with powerlifting, the priority is building the lifts. Yes, you have some volume, but that is the minimum effective volume to maintain or slightly gain muscle mass. Whereas on the hypertrophy side, you are trying to unlock the maximum effective volume to get the most muscle growth possible. And the thing is, with hypertrophy training, you can still do your compound lifts and progress in them. However, you're looking at rep ranges of like 6 to 10 plus instead of 2 to 6. Number 4 was not targeting weak points. For the majority of my training, I did not prioritize or shift my training around to target weak points. The best example of this was my arms. I would always be like, oh, my arms and shoulders are so small, and then I didn't do anything about it. I was still doing basically my entire workout and saving arms for last, and I wasn't adding or changing the volume or the structure of my training split to grow my arms. And then I wondered why they weren't growing. A good example of me targeting a weak point was when I realized that I don't really have much width in terms of my lats. So for a good part of the year, my pull days were completely prioritizing lat growth. I remember spending basically my entire back day sitting at the lat pull down machine and just alternating grips. And guess what? It worked. My lats blew up and I contribute most of my lat gains now to that period of time. So obviously when you're super early in the gym, you don't really have weak points. That's not something to concern yourself about. Just make sure your training is well balanced and everything's getting hit somewhat evenly. However, when you're in that intermediate to advanced range, you'll start to notice what's truly lagging, and that's when it's time to switch up the training. Number 5 was not doing deload / maintenance phases. Now the thing is, early on, both with myself and a lot of lifters, we tend to train like pussy. And while some people definitely do continue to train like that, that's not me and you, right? Come on. So when you do learn how to properly train, you're progressively overloading, you're always going within a rep or so of failure, or even going all the way to failure. Even though that's the most optimal for progression, you'll realize that sometimes you'll hit brick walls, plateaus, that for some reason there's nothing you can do to go past it. And it wasn't until like a year and a half ago where I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try out this deload thing. Maybe it's not just a thing for wiener babies. I think originally I just took like kind of a week off of just really light training, maybe even cut the calories back a bit. And funny enough, during that little deload, I would actually put on a little bit of weight, and by the time I'm going back fully in the gym, I felt super refreshed, ready to start progressing again. But the thing about deload phases is that you have to be pretty self-aware and understand when you've actually earned a deload. To do a deload, I would say do not do it very long, a week to 2 weeks maximum. Cut your training volume basically in half, and maybe even consider taking a couple days off from the gym completely. However, be careful to only do this for the allotted time. It could be a slippery slope for you to just end up maintaining for a couple months because you're lazy and you don't want to go back to pushing hard and pounding food. Last but not least, number 6 is overstimulation. For a pretty long period of time, I would experience this feeling I could describe as a post-gym depression, and I had no idea why. And years later, after I developed a deeper understanding of how the brain works and dopamine works, I now understand why this happens. Basically, I would take some crazy high-stim pre-workout with some kind of exotic stimulant in it, go to the gym, blare my favorite music, talk to my friends, check social media, and then afterwards, I'm just so fried, you know, you just kind of sit there and you're like, oh, why do I feel like this? And it's because I was having an extremely high dopamine release during my training. One, because training in general releases dopamine. Exotic stimulants can help you release dopamine or even have direct precursors to dopamine, making you release more by default. Blaring my favorite music in my ears, checking social media between sets, led to this stacking of all these dopamine releasing activities that led to this huge spike and this huge crash. And the worst thing about that is it's not just a temporary problem. If you continue to do this over time, super high dopamine releases, your baseline of dopamine is going to drop, meaning your brain's default level of motivation and drive will lower. So that's what I would say would be my 6 biggest fitness mistakes in my skinny to muscular journey. However, if you have any other ones or want to add on the ones we talked about, please leave a comment below. Also, real quick, I'm so happy to announce that my fully comprehensive fitness course is finally done and it's finally here. It has over 3 hours of video content diving into the nuances of nutrition, training, supplementation, rest, mindset, as well as 4 hypertrophy programs and 1 strength training program. So if you're interested in this kind of all-in-one tool for optimizing your training, your health, your natural testosterone production, then you can check it out if you want with the top link in the description below. But regardless, honestly, I'm just super excited to be back, fully dedicating myself to YouTube. So furthermore, yes, comment about the video, but if you guys have any other content you'd like to see, I would also really appreciate you commenting something like that. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you. That does more for the algorithm than any comment or like ever will. And I also want to add just how much I've appreciated your support all of 2022. We went from, I don't know, like 15,000 subscribers all the way to 50, which was my goal. But that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, 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 bye.